Judges chapter 13 verses 1 to 23. The sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord, so that the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. A certain man named Zorah, family of Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, angel of the Lord, right? There we go again. Behold, you are barren, have no children, but you shall conceive and give birth to a son. Who is the angel of the Lord? Where is it written? Okay, now therefore be careful, do not drink wine or strong drink. For behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Okay, and the woman said and told her husband, a man of God appeared, came to me. Now, verse 7. The boy shall be a Nazarite to, last verse, the last two lines of verse 7. The boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. For most times when people would take a vow of a Nazarite, it would be for a period of time. For Samson, it was life. That vow was supposed to be for life. Where do you find the Nazarite vow? In the Bible. Numbers 6. Turn to Numbers chapter 6. God, man. What is a Nazarite not supposed to do? What is he not supposed to do? What does Nazarite mean? Set apart, to dedicate. What is he not supposed to do? Everyone is saying first wine. Why? First point, everyone said, he's not supposed to drink wine. Okay. Okay. No razor shall pass over his head. Means he should not go to the barber. And no touching a dead person. Okay. So, what are the three things? No strong drink. Okay. No alcohol, no strong drink. Will not cut his hair. No razor will touch. Third, will not touch a dead or an unclean person or an animal. Right? Three things. So Samson is going to be a Nazarite for life. Okay? From the womb to the day of his death. So in verse 1 you see that he is there for the nation. Okay? He will judge Israel. Verses 2 to 5 we spoke about that, the vow over there. And he had a home, he would get it there now. And Manoah is right there. He begins to ask God, listen to the voice of Manoah. He says, in verse 8, Manoah said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you have sent come to us again, that he may teach us what to do for the boy who is supposed to be born. God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman as she was sitting in the field. Manoah was not with her. She runs, gets him. And Manoah says, when your words come to pass, what shall be the boy's mode of life and his vocation? He says, let the woman pay attention to all that I said. She should not eat anything that comes from the wine or drink, nor eat any unclean thing. Let her observe all that I have commanded. Manoah said, please let us detain you. Reminds you of Genesis chapter 18. It goes on. And verse 18. But the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you ask my name, seeing it is what? Wonderful. Okay, now this same word wonderful in the book of Isaiah is used for the word for Messiah. Okay, he is used of the Messiah. My name is what? Wonderful. Okay, also in Islam they pick this verse up and try to show from this book that this is referring to the messenger, the one who's going to come, right? So they will use this verse to counterattack and talk about that. Okay, so we can, that's for apologetics, we can talk about that. But this is one of the verses that they will use. Okay, but this is referring to the Messiah in book of Isaiah. Okay, so Manoah does that. In verse 20, the Lord ascended in the flames. Okay, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flames. And Manoah said, oh, now we have seen God, we will surely die. Was he right in saying that? Correct. But in verse 22, wife had some common sense. If we'll die, then how will we fulfill the purpose of God? You are right. Okay, so when Samson is born, okay, now This is one person that, it surprises some when you read the scriptures very clearly. It does not say about David that the Spirit of the Lord came upon David mightily 5 times. But in Samson's life, it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson mightily 5 times. No one in the Old Testament does it say 5 times except Samson. I'm amazed at, sometimes how the grace of God is. It's like that this man, what does Samson mean? Some people say it means sunny, some people say it means brightness. Whatever it means, he surely was not so bright, the decisions that he made. But, what does it say about God? Like I'm thinking about, yes, we think about Samson, but the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson mightily 5 times. That's what he would do, And you see in verses chapter 14 onwards, it keeps saying that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. He sees the Philistine woman, wants to get married to her. In verse 9 of chapter 14. Now, remember in verse 4, chapter 14, when he is going to see the woman, he goes into the vineyard, kills a lion. On the way back, he goes back into the vineyard to see what he had done. And in verse 9, he says, he scraped the honey into the carcass of the lion is there. The swarm of bees and honey was in the body of the lion. He scraped the honey into his hands and went on eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some of it to them. They ate it, but he did not tell him that he had scraped it out of the body of a dead carcass. Now, what was a Nazirite not supposed to do? He did it very early in his life and lied about it and kept quiet. And he thought nobody will know. And that's like, sometimes you read that verse, it's a very simple and clear instruction from the Old Testament into the New Testament believer's life. God does not forget those things. When did he break his vow? Right that early in his life. What was it? Lust. He wanted to satisfy his appetite. He wanted to go and see, I killed a lion. Oh, the lion's carcass. Why was the reason to go first? He's going with his family. He goes into the vineyard. You're not supposed to go into the vineyard because there are wild animals there. Then he goes, meets the girl. On the way back, he goes back into the vineyard to see the lion that he has killed. There's pride already there in coming. And then he sees honey right then. He says, let me eat some. And then he gives it to his family and he lies to them. And says, no, some there, just take it. There was sin already taken its root right there. The fall of a person does not come immediately. It's sometimes years. They continue to live thinking no one knows, no one is seeing, nothing is happening, let me go on, let me go on, let me go on. And then it happens. The fall no one falls immediately because they sin. It's always behind. Something's been going on for years. And God in His grace kept forgiving, giving grace, giving grace, giving grace. And then there comes a time when, you hit the axe on your own foot. And then it's out there. Okay? So, that is all in 13 and 14. Okay? He takes a vow. All those things are there. He loses his respect for his parents in verses 1 to 4. We saw that. Okay? 5 to 9. All the promise that was made for God, he loses that too there because he's suddenly broken the commandment that he's not supposed to. In 10 to 18, the father went down to the woman. Samson made a feast. Young men. Okay? And then he comes and begins to give a riddle. Okay? Trying to show he's smart. Okay? And in verse 15, they came to Samson's wife and said, entice your husband that he may tell us the riddle, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Okay, there you go. There is the lust of the eyes, and now you see what's slowly is beginning to happening. Okay, so what does she do? She wept before him 7 days. Oh, my sweet wife is weeping. And it came about on the 7th day, she pressed him so hard that he told the riddle to the sons of the people. Okay, so what happened? Enticed him, controlled him, and then she betrayed him, and then she went out and told. Okay, he compromised with the person he should have not compromised. He went and married outside and thinking that, everything's going to be fine. The second problem you see in Samson's life was in his whole career here as a judge, you will never see him calling people together. Every other judge, when they went to battle, they called all Israel together. Samson never called anyone. He said, I can do it on my own. He had that pride in him that I'm so strong, and Nazarite, wow, God has given it to me. I can do things on my own. He never called people united. He said, I will handle everything on my own. That was his second problem. There was a sin that he would practice secretly. He had a weakness for women, very obviously. And then he had this whole thing about himself. And we can, and it's amazing that God would continue to empower him and use him and give him chance upon chance to come back, right? So, and verse 19, you see that again. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily. This is the third time he's saying. Okay? In chapter 15, it's all the exploits of Samson. In verse 14 of chapter 15, you will see again the Spirit of the Lord came upon mightily. Okay, so he burned, the Philistine came up and burned her and her father with fire, and Samson, after he put the foxes together, burned the field. So you can read all that, I'm not going to explain that too much. Okay, in chapter 16, in verse 3, Samson lay there, and now Samson went to Gaza. He saw a harlot and he went into her. Again, that whole weakness is coming up. And it was told to the Gazites, Samson has come here. They surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city, and they kept silent all night, saying, let us wait until the morning and then we will kill him. Samson lay until midnight. At midnight he arose, took the hold of the doors of the city gate, 2 posts, pulled them up along, and carried them on his shoulders to the top of mount opposite Hebron. Man, was he powerful or what? He just took the whole gate of the city. Now the whole gate of the city is not like our small door. It was 32 miles upward on a mountain, 61 kilometers. He carried the gate on his shoulder of a city with its 2 posts. He was strong. And he was so strong, he thought he didn't need anyone else. And that's a mistake that sometimes we can make. Oh, I am so talented, I am so gifted, I have this and I have that, I don't need anyone else. You be a lone ranger, you'll go down very quickly. You need the body of Christ. We need each other. You can't live on your own. Okay, the Christian life, right? Okay, so fall of Samson, chapter 16. And Delilah, clever as she is, does what she does best. You have deceived me, verse 13 of chapter 16. If you weave 7 locks of my hair with a web, and all that goes on. In verse 15, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? Wow, right words used. He falls. He had a weakness. And you see, he had a weakness for the Philistine woman. He goes to the harlot, and now he's here with Delilah. He's in the same sin, living, thinking he'll escape every time. He has the same problem. He does not get rid of it. Okay? And he says, the razor has never touched my head. She betrays him again. Verse 20 of chapter 16. The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out at other times and shake myself free. I'll break those as I did earlier. He had nice muscles. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. And the Philistines seized him, gouged his eyes out, brought him to Gaza, bound him with a chain, and he was a grinder in the prison. Okay? First they blinded him, then they binded him, then they grinded him. Right? And that's what sin does. It blinds you till you become its slave. And then it binds you. You become its captive. And then it grinds you. You pay for it. You pay for it. But verse 22 is one of the most amazing verses. He says, and the hair of his head began to grow again. That's grace. That's grace right there. His strength is coming back. Imagine once grinding, he's trying to wipe the sweat off his head, and he says, oh, my hair is coming back. Which means what? Strength is coming back again. That's the grace of God. Like, did he deserve the hair to grow again? No. Should he? No. But why is God doing it? Why is God doing it? We take all his weaknesses aside, but think also about the heart that he had. He would go about, he protected. Though he was alone, he still defended the nation. And God said, this is my man still. No problem, I'll still use him. One last time, I'll still use him. Now, The Lord of the Philistines gathered. When the people saw, they praised their God. Okay. Call for us, Samson. He will amuse us. Okay. Verse 28. Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me just this time, that I may once be avenged of the Philistines of my 2 eyes. Verse 30. Let me die with the Philistines. God answered his prayer. He asked that he would die. It was not God's plan that he would die by removing the pillars. He asked for it. In a way, because he said, now that my eyes are not there, and I have sinned and I brought shame upon God's people, let me just do this one act and I'll die honorably. And it says there, and so the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he killed in his life. You know, God, this is one thing you always remember, and I'm not saying this so that we live the way we want to live or live sinfully. But we remember that, you know, that God is a God of second chances. He always does give a second chance. He always does. There is patience. There is patience in the way God deals with us, but does not mean that we take his patience lightly. There is another chance that God will give us, that he gave to Samson. He called Jonah again. The word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. God calls again and again and again. That's his heart for his people. But it does not mean you use those things and live as you want, do as you want, say what you want, and think like God is not. Don't think those things. This story of Samson is a very clear example. You think you have a lot, you can live as you want, God is there. And once you are humbled, broken, repented, then the grace comes in and God lifts you up again. He gives you another chance. And so what if we fail? Right? So what if we fail? We do fail, but we don't want to purposely, rebel and live in sin. We will make mistakes sometimes, okay? But not like the way it is written here. He knows what he is not supposed to do and he does it. And that's basically what sin is, missing the mark. But also you want to think about the grace of God. Like when it came to a point where Samson thought it would be his end, blind, in chains, and going round and round grinding, his hair began to grow again. God had a plan, and so from the day of his birth to the end, he was supposed to protect a nation. He did what he could do. But also this story signifies that the way, like, we don't live the way we want to live. If we are set apart for the kingdom of God, we don't mix around with worldly things. What was Samson's mistake? It's written in 1 John, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and pride of life. He had all three. He would take the honey from a dead lion's carcass and say, I killed this lion. Lust of the eyes. He would look at a beautiful woman, did not matter who she was, and he wanted a relationship with her. And pride of life. I can handle it on my own. He had all those three problems, and he fell. And he fell. And so as believers, it's the same. The devil is not creative. He is creative in different approaches, but at the root of it is all these three things again and again and again. He always will try to attract and tempt through the eyes first. The pride of life. Put a thought in your heart. And so be careful with those things, okay? So, chapter 17. And now we are going to into fifth gear. Okay. Chapter 17. Hill country of Ephraim. Again, whose name was what? Micah. He said to his mother, 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing. Behold, the silver is with me. I took it. And the mother said, blessed be my son. You stole from me, you giving it back? Nice boy. Blessed are you. I returned the curse. He returned the 1,100 pieces to her. The mother said, I wholly dedicate it from my hand to the Lord for my son to make a graven image. Make an idol. So when he returned the silver to his mother, the mother took 200 pieces of silver, gave them to the silversmith, who made a graven image, molten image, and they were in the house of Micah. In the first 7 verses, 9 commandments of the 10 commandments are broken in the first 7 verses. If you read it and see it carefully in this chapter. Where is it happening? Ephraim. Man named Micah. What does Micah mean? Who is like Yahweh. He is absolutely opposite of who is like Yahweh. Okay, so he broke out approximately between 8 and 9 of the 10 commandments in his house without even going out. Record holder. He didn't even go out to sin. In his house only break all the commandments. Okay. Verses 7 to 13. Okay. Now, verse 6 is the key verse there. Every man did what was right in his own eye. Okay. I want to worship a tree. I am right in my eye. I want to worship a stone. I am right in my eye. You see that happening today also. No fear of God. Everyone, what I do is right. That's why these small groups form everywhere. Then, there's a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, family of Judah, who was what? Levite. What is a Levite supposed to do? And he was saying there, what is a Levite supposed to do? His name is what? Jonathan. Okay. Man departed from the city, from Bethlehem, to stay wherever might he find a place, came on a journey, hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. Wow. Divine appointment. Micah said, where do you come from? I am a Levite. From Bethlehem, Judah, I am going to find a place to stay. Micah said, dwell with me. Be my father and priest. I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year. Suit of clothes, maintenance. So the Levite went in and agreed to live. What does Micah have in his house? Idols. This man is a Levite. Set apart to serve whom? Living God. He gets what? Money, clothes, house. Chalega. Believer hi to hai. Compromise. When God calls, then God provides and God shows the way. And we don't take the calling of God lightly. The word call is kaleo, which means court summons. Judge calls, you go. The call, God calls, you answer. And you don't decide how your provision is to be taken place. He knows he can take care. This is not my own system. I can live as I want. Oh, God has called me to be a pastor. Now I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't work that way. That never happens, right? He didn't want to work, I think. Be a father to me. Oh, nice position. I'll give you 10 pieces of silver. Oh, nice money. Come in and I'll give you a nice suit. Oh, nice clothes. This pastoring is a nice job. Everyone comes, says nice things to you. They give you money in your hand. I want to be a pastor because why? I'll get money. Wrong motive. He was a Levite, right? Where is the conviction gone? Out of the window. I'll go wherever. I'll do whatever. And you will see the compromise here, because in the next chapter, when the people invade and they say, come over on this side, this man leaves Micah's house and goes there because he gets a better offer here. Oh, I'm here to serve God. Hey, why don't you, enough of serving God. You can serve God in your old age. Why don't you come and join this company? We'll give you pay package. Higher, you take over the church. I'll go and work there. When God has told me to take care of my family, when I take care of my family, then I come. So easy, right? I'm not saying there are some people, pastors, godly men, who are bivocational. They also do a job and also pastor. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, when a person knows he is called and yet chooses to ignore that call and goes out in the world and does what he wants to satisfy his own self. Like he has no respect for the call that God has put on his life. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? I'm not talking about a bivocational pastor. I'm talking about someone whom God calls and the person says, yes, I know, but if I get 1, 2, 3 good things in my life, then this is a good job. Let me do it as a job. Who cares, those things. So verse 12, Micah consecrates the Levite. Who gave him the authority to do that? And the young man became his priest, lives in whose house. And Micah said, the Lord will prosper me. I have a Levite. I'll give money to the church. I'll give money to the pastor. God, they will bless me. Sure. We have confusion in chapter 18. No king in Israel. Tribe of Danites seeking an inheritance for them to live in. Dan was given a place to live in. They chose not to live into the place. They went to another place and tried to forcibly take it. What is yours is mine. What is mine also, but what is yours is also mine. Okay? And got confusion totally. Why? They didn't want to fight their enemies back home. Of all the tribes, Dan was one of the tribes, or probably the only tribe in the end, who could not drive away the enemies and the Canaanites from their land. So they continued to live in idolatry. And then they said, we are fed up with this, let's go and take someone else's land. God had given them a portion. They said, we don't want this, you'll take something else by force. Total confusion going on right there. Okay? So, they go away in verses 14 to 26. The 5 men go out to spy out the land. Do you know that there are in the houses an ephod and household images and graven images and a molten image? Consider what you should do. Whose house are they talking about now? Micah's place. He is a wealthy man. He has his idols in his house. 600 men armed with weapons stood by the entrance of the gate. 5 men who went up to the spy land took up the graven image, ephod. Okay? And these men went into Micah's house, took the graven images and said to them, and they said to him, be silent, put your hand over your mouth and come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better that you be priest over the house of one man, or priest over a tribe and a family in Israel? And Levite said, Jonathan, promotion. God is promoting me from one house, now I'm going to be Levite and father over one tribe. I'm coming with you. The priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and household images, graven, and went with the people. Verse 24, Micah gets angry and says, you have taken away my gods which I made. Man, you now making God. And the priest, and have gone away. What do I have besides? You know what he's saying? You put these things before God, someday you'll come, you have nothing left. You'll have nothing left. It's basically the lesson that's here. I stole the money, not I, but the guy here, Micah stole the money. Then, not out of fear of God, he didn't want to be cursed, so he went to the mother. She says, take the money, build an image. You see, Micah is not objecting to anything. Then he goes, hires a priest, makes him fall. Then he goes again, makes images. He's doing all these things, increasing the images in his house. What is his level now? I have nothing left. Images are gone, priest is gone, tribe is gone, house is gone. Everything that he got by deceit and compromise went. That's the lesson right here. You try ungodly ways of getting things and ungodly way of things, it's not going to last too long. It never lasts too long. Okay, God knows how to handle those things. Chapter 19, Benjamite war. Okay, the concubine, the man from Bethlehem takes the concubine. She goes away from him. Right? In chapter 19, she goes away from him. He goes back to get her. Father says, stay back one more night, stay back one more night, stay back one more night. 5 nights they have fun. Then they go away. Okay? In chapter 19, right? Verse 23, the man, the owner of the house. Now when they went into that place where they stayed in the night, okay, and it was almost like Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says, no, my fellows, please do not act so wickedly. What is it saying in verse 22? Bring out the man who came into your house so that we may have relations with him. Remember? Genesis 19, same story is happening here. No, my fellows, do not do this. Since this man has come to my house, do not commit this folly. And the man says, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. Please let me bring them out. And the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine, brought her out to them, and they raped her all and abused her all night. And then they kill her. And this man in chapter 20 cuts his concubine into 12 parts and sends it all over Israel, to each tribe. Whose fault was it? His fault. She got abused. And then he cuts her up and sends her. He should have gone to Shiloh in Deuteronomy chapter 18 to ask the head priest what to do. He takes matters in his own hands. And he sends. And what happens is everyone gets upset in chapter 20. All Israel comes together, 400,000. Benjamin says, no, we are not coming. And the whole 11 tribes are on one side and Benjamin is on one side, right? And they're saying, worthless fellows of Gibeah, they are the wrong ones. But Benjamin says no. And you know what happens? Brother goes against brother. 11 tribes go against Benjamin. And there's a war right there. In verse, we know that Benjamin's left hand is slingshots, right? The battle happens. Benjamin wins 2 times, 22,000, 20,000 people are lost. And then Benjamin is reduced to 600 men. Everyone else dies. God gives Israel over. And Israel wins the battle there. And in basically what is happening over there, the nation is broken now completely. Why? How did it start? If one man had taken care of his home, the nation would have not fallen. And the lesson in the whole book of Judges you will see is, if a man does not take care of his home, the society gets affected soon. The society gets affected, the nation gets affected, the nation gets broken. How come nations who were once missionary sending nations to all over the world are so low morally today? It started small. It started small. UK sent out missionaries all over the world for years. Where is Christianity in UK today? America sent out missionary for years. What's happening there today? Moral decay. It's okay for man to marry a man. The book of Judges, and it closes, the book of Judges basically closes. In those days, verse 25, there was no king in Israel. They had a king. It was Yahweh himself, but they wanted a physical king. They didn't want an invisible king. And everyone did what was right in their own eyes. The last verse of Judges summons entirely what the whole book is all about. But I won't leave you on this note. The book of Ruth is the kinsman redeemer, right? So we choose where we want to live, in the book of Judges or in the book of Ruth. Amen? You have 5 minutes.